So I got the engine all cleaned up and I got it ready to go, and I started taking out the ignition coils and making sure that I kept them in order. Not that it really matters, but I'm just wanting to do that. And I took them out and cleaned them with some simple green and cleaned up the engine a little bit more. And I just wanted to get a spark plug wrench on there and just make sure that they were snug. I wasn't trying to over torque them because the 4-thread spark plug threads can strip if they're over tightened too much, and you can really strip them easily. So I just kind of put my hand on there and just kind of give it a little bit of a twist on my wrist and make sure that they're all snug because I don't want them being loose and popping out. And then I went through and I got the shop vac out and started cleaning everything out of the area around the ignition coils and down in the spark plug holes. There's always little tiny pieces of grime and leaves and junk inside engines like this, and so I just wanted to clean this out, and I use a red straw, kind of like a milkshake straw, because even when you put the shop vac over the spark plug hole, it still doesn't get everything out. But this is a nice way to kind of get down in there and break it up and get stuff. So if you do take out a spark plug, junk doesn't fall in. Now, I wanted to go around and just put some black Permatex RTV on the valve covers and, right here where the gasket meets. This didn't appear to be leaking at all, but I thought, why not just try this out for fun? Just kind of put a bead around the whole thing, and then I went and smoothed it with my finger. Just because on some spots it did kind of look like it was a little moist, and I believe these are newer gaskets anyway, but I just thought I might as well put a little extra RTV around there so it doesn't leak in case it was dripping somewhere. But the bottom side of the heads looked really clean. I didn't see any oil dripping on there, but I wanted to rotate the engine upside down and remove the oil pan. And the oil pan did look like it was seeping a little bit, and the gasket, I believe, was probably pretty new as well. Maybe it was reused. I think this engine had been gone through at some point, and I think I talked about that in my other video, but I do have markings on the timing cover, the rear main seal cover, the valve cover, and the block that have the same sequence number, and it's definitely not from the factory. So inside the oil pan, you'll see as well that number's in there with a signature. But I wanted to turn this over and take off the oil pan because the gasket seemed to be like it was leaking a little bit. And I noticed when I took the drain plug out of this oil pan that it was kind of stripped. Like you would put it in there and it just wasn't right. And this engine at some point had 208,000 miles on it. I don't know if it's all original. I don't think it's original, or it's either been rebuilt or gone through or something. But I'm sure that drain plug has seen a lot of oil changes. And so I have 4 extra oil pans for Mustang, so I thought I might as well do that. So I had to take off this harness here on the bottom, which is for the starter and the ground and stuff. And it's actually really good that I have this, because I have some other ones, but they were missing some pieces. So I went around and I started taking out the oil pan bolts, and then I just lifted the oil pan off, and I was anxious to see what we find inside because, like I said, the car this came out of says on the odometer it had 208,000 miles, but I think this has been gone through and stuff. I was missing one bolt here. But anyway, I wanted to see how clean it looked inside and see if there was any sludge. And mostly I wanted to check the oil pickup tube and make sure there weren't any pieces of timing chain guide, because the plastic on those will break and then it gets sucked in the oil pickup tube. And that would let me know that whether I need to take off the timing cover and do new guides and tensioners and stuff. But to my happy surprise, if you saw my face when I took that off, I was very excited to see that everything looked very clean. And so I was very happy about that. So here's the oil pickup tube. Looks very, very, very nice. I've had quite a few of these that had chunks of plastic stuck in them from, like I said, the timing set when the plastic guides and tensioners that have pieces that chunk off and then get sucked up in there. And so I looked around the best I could, and I didn't see anything wrong anywhere. It looked really good in here. I was looking up here on the timing chains to make sure that the chains didn't have slack from the tensioners being punched through the guides like on my brother's GT, and that's very common on these cars. But everything looked really good, and this is how clean the oil pan was as I took it off. I didn't do anything to it. I didn't clean it out. I didn't do anything at all. So this is how nice it looked. It looked very, very good. And so if you look closely, you can see that marking on the inside of the oil pan there. And that number appears on the block and the valve cover, timing cover, rear cover, and there's a signature there too. So I think this engine has been gone through at some degree. I don't know whether it's been totally redone or not. The hashing on the cylinders looked really good, the cross hatching, so it might have been redone. I don't know if it's bored 20 over. I have no idea anything about this engine, but it does look really good. And everything looked really clean. There was no metal in the oil. There was no coolant in the oil. Everything just looked fantastic. So I was very, very happy about that. So I went ahead and cleaned the mating surfaces, and I did notice that on the back of the timing cover, where what I call the doghouse, it's that back plate that goes around the crankshaft and the rear main seal, that did not have RTV on the spots where that meets the block, and it needed black RTV on that spot plus where the timing cover meets the oil pan. And it did have the RTV where the timing cover meets the oil pan. So I'm pretty sure that when they did this and put it all back together, they did it all right, but they missed the step on the back, and that's probably why the oil pan had that seepage. And so the oil pan gaskets are reusable, and I think this one might have been reused. And so I have another one that's very low mile. It is also used, but you can see I'm putting the black RTV on the mating surfaces where the timing cover meets the block. But anyway, I did have another one. See, here's the back part. This is where I think they missed it on whatever they did to the car. So you should put a dab here of this, and I like to use the ultra black. It's good for oil resistant and all that stuff, so I think it's really good for gaskets, and it's always been good to me. I really like using it. But anyway, I have this newer oil pan gasket, so I thought I'd go ahead and use this one. And I've had a few in the past, and I've even changed oil pans. Like on my Bullet, I put the 8-quart MMR one on there because I thought the oil pan was leaking, but it turned out to be the timing cover was not sealed perfectly. So, it's just trial and error and stuff. But anyway, this is the new gasket I have on here, and it looks pretty good. And I think this is going to seal nicely. I mean, there's no guarantee, but, it looked better than the one that was on there. So I went ahead and did that, and then I put the new oil pan on, and I did notice that the bolts for this whole oil pan were the same style bolts as the ones that they should be, but they were smaller. I think they were 10 millimeter, and all the ones I've ever seen were 13 millimeter, and they looked exactly the same. They have the little built-in washer and stuff that can move and stuff. And I don't know why, but it was different. So I jumped underneath my other cars and looked around and noticed that they were correct. They were the bigger ones. And so that was kind of funny, but it seemed like it was all right, and they looked the same. So I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, got that all nice on there. And I even referred back to the Haynes manual on torquing it. And, it had I think it was 15 foot-pounds, and then tighten 60 degrees, and on 97 and later is what it said. I had my torque wrench and everything, and so I did that in the right pattern. Now, the harness, I had the hardest time getting this nut off of the stud from the harness that was the electrical one for the starter and stuff. It was really on there. It twisted the whole harness when I tried to unbolt it. But anyway, got that all in, got it all torqued to spec. everything looking good. So I'm very happy about that because now I have a better drain plug. I have a new seal there, and I even went around and I did some more black RTV around the rim of this gasket. Now, I had in the past put double gasketing on like the bullets oil pan because it was leaking so many times, which turned out to be the timing cover, like I said. But I had done it where I put the gasket on and RTV, and it kind of squished it out the side. I don't recommend that. Plus, I had used like a blue or an orange RTV, and it wasn't oil resistant, and it just smeared and flaked away after just a few heat cycles. And so anyway, you can see got a lot going on here. Everything's looking kind of messy, but I like to organize it and clean it up as I go. I did get the power steering line off, which was kind of a nightmare, but I thought it's better to get it off while I'm here, and I have all new lines for the car because the previous owner had cut them all off and stuff. So anyway, did all that and everything's looking good. So that's the update for the zinc yellow Mustang GT and the new engine. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more Mustang content.